Coming up, a woman was shot after an altercation with a Monoman County Sheriff deputy. And one person has died in a house fire in rural Clay County. Plus, one couple shares their experience during yesterday's multi-vehicle pileup. Valley News Live at 10 starts now.
This is Valley News Live at 10.
New tonight at 10. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nisha Taylor. The Monoman County Sheriff's Office says a woman was shot after an altercation with the deputy in the village of Natawash. Authorities say around 1:30 this morning, the deputy was attempting to make a traffic stop, but the suspect vehicle fled, leading the deputy on a chase. The vehicle later ran into a ditch, and law enforcement say after the vehicle stopped, shots were fired, wounding the woman. She was later transported to a Fargo hospital, and her condition remains unknown at this time. Authorities also say a firearm was recovered at the scene. The incident is now being investigated by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Also new tonight, one person has died following yesterday's house fire in rural Clay County. Authorities say they were called just before 1:30 yesterday afternoon to the home on 43rd Avenue near 270th Street in Hawley. Fire crews were alerted that black smoke and flames could be seen coming from the home. And when they arrived, they found the structure fully engulfed in flames. The Clay County Sheriff's Office says once the fire was out, crews used construction equipment to remove debris, and during this time, the victim's body was found. Currently, it's still unclear what caused that fire. Yesterday, several vehicles were involved in a massive pileup that blocked I-29 near Grand Forks. In striking video, vehicles were seen heavily damaged and some had even overturned. Valley News Team's Aaron Walling shares one couple's experience of making it through that pileup.
It happened so fast, and next thing you know, we're on the brakes trying to steer through all the traffic.
Drivers and cars were littered all over I-29 on Saturday, as more than 15 vehicles were caught up in the pileup. Janelle Jensen and her husband Brian made it through the crashes somehow without a scratch on their way to a concert in Grand Forks.
Looking through the mirrors, I could see vehicles hitting each other. Out of my driver's side mirror, I could see someone sliding through the median and onto the southbound traffic lane.
The Grand Forks Sheriff's Office posted on their Facebook page saying one of their squad cars had also been hit. In the post, officials stated, "No concert is worth getting injured over. Slow down."
I was scared. I mean, you think the worst is going to happen. I never in my life thought that we were just going to make it through unharmed.
According to the North Dakota Highway Patrol, at this time, the exact number of crashes have yet to be determined. They also say the injuries from the crashes are believed to be non-life-threatening. But the Jensens say they are grateful they didn't get caught up in the massive pileup.
It's crazy. Like, still, if I think about it, I get the shakes a little.
In Fargo, Aaron Walling, Valley News Live.
Meanwhile, a North Dakota Child Protection Services report says calls for child abuse increased in 2021. Nearly 17,000 reports of child abuse were made last year. CPS officials say the numbers of reports have increased as the population is more vigilant about reporting abuse.
Signs of possible abuse that people can notice that they'll file a report on. That can include bruising, welts, burns, broken bones, any other injury that can be, cannot be explained or even seems suspicious. There's also those situations of neglect.
Roughly 1,400 children were found to be victims of child abuse or neglect, but CPS officials say that number of those victims have decreased from last year. On Friday, a Fargo couple had a big scare when their plane started acting up while on their way to Minot. Thankfully, they made an emergency landing and came out with no injuries. Valley News Team's Alex Larson met with a couple who shares their scary experience.
His training, hands down, got us on the ground safely.
John Schilling has been flying for almost 25 years. He and his fiancée Amanda McKinnon regularly fly together. The two were on their way to a wake for a friend who recently passed away. Everything was fine until John says the plane began to have mechanical issues.
I've had rough running mags before, and that's actually what it felt like initially. Like I told her, I said hindsight, we were just past Harvey, North Dakota at the time. In hindsight, with a rough running mag, you really wouldn't think to turn around, but had I known what was going to come, I would have turned around and landed in Harvey.
John says when he realized they were not going to make the runway, it was time to pick a spot to land.
One of the things I said to him was, I'm like, I trust you. And then he was like, I love you. And then it was basically like, get ready for impact.
They were too low to pull the parachute, but they were able to clear some power lines and get down to a nearby field.
It almost appeared as if we were going to be safe and with minimal damage to the aircraft. However, then we hit a small chunk of what I would consider to be very hard packed snow, at which point the wheel kind of dug in and it sheared the front nose wheel off.
John says he's always wondered what he'd do in a situation like this, but never wanted to experience it.
Basically, my training, my instincts kicked in. I wasn't focused on much other than ensuring that both Amanda and myself were safe. We wanted to get home to my 2 sons and my daughter, and it was my goal to figure out any way and every way to possibly do that.
And it's currently unknown what caused the issue.
Knowing exactly what was the cause, obviously seeing the after effects, seeing the oil blowing all out the belly of the aircraft, knowing that the engine had a full catastrophic failure of some sort, was calming for me to know that it wasn't something that I had done.
But the couple says it's reassuring being able to return home to their children.
Yeah, I was a mess, honestly. So, great baby.
Can't wait to see him on Monday, give him a huge bear hug.
In Fargo, Alex Larson, Valley News Live.
Friday marked 2 years since the first confirmed COVID-19 case in North Dakota, and it's a reminder of what the state has gone through in the last 24 months. At the beginning of the pandemic, long-term care facilities were heavily impacted. Visitation restrictions and staffing shortages resulted in difficult changes for many residents. Christopher Larson, the chairman of the Reuniting Residents and Families Task Force, says he's proud of how people have adapted since the start of the pandemic.
I can't say enough about the collaboration between families and facilities and state partners and federal partners. It just really shows that when we come together as a community, we can get through these things.
Larson says that long-term care facilities have fully allowed visitation, and the task force is now focused on resident advocacy. Former President Barack Obama says he tested positive for COVID-19. He made the announcement on Twitter today, saying he's had a scratchy throat for a couple of days, but is feeling fine. He says his wife Michelle has tested negative and that they're grateful to be vaccinated and boosted. Later on Valley News Live at 10, a U.S. journalist shot by Russian forces speaks while in the hospital. But up next, Summer shares how warm it could get this week, but don't let it fool you, as a chance of snow is also on the way.